I am making an update for my Gimmick Puppet deck profile since with the release of Mason the Master, a new Gimmick Puppet card was released, so I figured why not update the deck or show an updated list. And this does still use the Horus stuff, so if you don't want to use the Horus stuff, then just toss in hand traps. But starting off with the monsters, I play 3 copies of Gimmick Puppet Little Soldiers. Little Soldiers is the main starter of the deck, just because it has the effect of when it's summoned, you can send a Gimmick Puppet monster with a different level from your deck to your graveyard, which ordinarily will be Gimmick Puppet Rouge Doll. And then Little Soldiers also has the effect that I'm trying to remember what it does. You can banish this card from your graveyard and target up to 2 Gimmick Puppet monsters you control, and then increase their levels by 4. That doesn't really. Actually, I think the FTK still uses that effect. Which that's the main thing that made me laugh is that Konami has tried so hard to prevent the Gimmick Puppet FTK, and it still exists. And then next, I play 2 copies of Gimmick Puppet Terror Baby. Terror Baby has the effect that when it's normal summoned, you can target a Gimmick Puppet monster in your graveyard except for another Terror Baby, and then special summon it in defense position. And then you can banish this card from your graveyard to make it so that your opponent can't activate cards or effects in response to your Gimmick Puppet monster effects. Which that just adds a little extra protection to the deck beyond just Mansion of the Dreadful Dolls. And then I play 3 copies of the new Gimmick Puppet, being Gimmick Puppet Fiendish Knight. Gimmick Puppet Fiendish Knight has the effect that if it's sent to the or if this card's in your hand, you can target a Gimmick Puppet monster in your graveyard, or monsters that in your opponent's graveyard. Special summon to your opponent's side of the field. Or special summon to your opponent's side of the field. You special summon it to its owner's field in defense position with its effects negated. Then you special summon this card from your hand. So you can use this summon back a level 4 in your graveyard, and then you can then use the previously mentioned Little Soldiers to make both the summon level 4 and this level 8. And then Fiendish Knight also has the effect that if it is sent to the graveyard except from the hand, you can then return it to the hand. I can't remember if it does anything else besides that. Okay, yeah, and then its only other effect is the Okay, yeah, you can only use each effect of Fiendish Knight once per turn, and if you use either effect, then you're locked into Gimmick Puppet Xyz monster from the extra deck, which is fine because every Xyz or every monster in the extra deck is a Gimmick Puppet. And then next, I play 1 copy of Gimmick Puppet Jury Doll. Jury Doll has the effect that once per turn, you can banish a Gimmick Puppet. If this card's in your graveyard, you can banish a Gimmick Puppet monster from your graveyard to special summon this card. However, the only downside of this card, ordinarily, is that it can only be used for the Xyz summon of Gimmick Puppet monsters, which, like I said earlier, every monster in the extra deck is a Gimmick Puppet. And next, I play 3 copies of Gimmick Puppet Rouge Doll. Rouge Doll has the effect that if it's sent, if it's sent to the graveyard except from hand, you can return it to your hand. And then Rouge Doll also has the effect that you can. Let's see, where was it? Okay, you can reveal a Gimmick Puppet Xyz monster from your extra deck to then special summon both this card from your hand and a Gimmick Puppet from your deck that has a level equal to the revealed monster's rank. And then I can't remember what else it does. Okay, and then it just locks you into Gimmick Puppets from the extra deck. Which, again, every monster is a Gimmick Puppet. And then next, I play 3 copies of Gimmick Puppet Bisque Doll. Bisque Doll has the effect that you can special summon this card from your hand by discarding 1 Gimmick Puppet monster. Then you can banish this card from your graveyard to make it so your opponent cannot target your Gimmick Puppet monsters with card effects. Until the end of the turn. Then next, I play 1 copy of Gimmick Puppet Cattle Scream. Cattle Scream has the effect that you can detach a material from an Xyz monster you control. Special summon this card to your opponent's side of the field, I believe. Okay, no, special summon this card from your hand or graveyard. However, it's banished when it leaves the field. Don't know why that effect is still used in Xyz based decks when they become material, they don't count as leaving the field. And then Cattle Scream also has the effect that Gimmick Puppet Xyz monster as this card's material has the effect. Gains the effect of once per turn. You can target one monster in your opponent's graveyard, special summon it to your opponent's field in defense position. Bleh. And that's it for the Gimmick Puppet monsters. For the Horus monsters, I pretty much just play one of each of the not so good ones, being Kebesenuev, Happy, and Duamatef. All the Horus monsters share the effect of you can special summon them if King Sarcophagus is on your field. You can special summon them from your graveyard if King Sarcophagus is on your field. And then they each have their own unique effect that triggers when a card you control leaves the field because of an opponent's card. Kebesenuev is honestly the worst of them, just because it just makes it so your opponent cannot target your Horus cards for card effects or for attacks. Happy lets you take two cards that are banished or in the graveyard and return them to your owner's hand. And then Duamatef lets you draw one card for every monster that's in your main monster zone. And then next I play 3 copies of Imseti, Glory of Horus. Imseti has the effect that once per turn you can discard this card and another card to then be able to add King Sarcophagus from your deck to your hand, and then you get to draw one card. And then when a card leaves your field by your opponent, you then get to send one card on the field to the or one card on your opponent's field to the graveyard. And then all the Horus monsters' effects are all hard once per turns. Also, Kebesenuev, I realized I forgot to mention it, gains 1200 attack for each different Horus monster you control. Okay, and that's it for the monsters. Moving on to the spells. I play 1 copy of Junk Puppet. This is essentially a monster born for a Gimmick Puppet. Then I play 3 copies of Rank Up Magic Argent Chaos Force. Argent Chaos Force has the effect that you can target I forgot exactly what targets. You can target rank 5 or higher and Xyz monster you control. Special summon a chaos number or a chaos Xyz monster from your extra deck that it has the same type and is 1 rank higher. And then if this card's in your graveyard, when you go to Xyz summon a rank 5 or higher Xyz monster, you can return this card to your hand. You can only use that effect of Rank Up Magic Argent Chaos Force once per duel. Happy day. The funny thing is, there are ways of recurring this from your graveyard to your hand in the deck outside of its own effect. And then probably one of the best spell cards in the deck is 3 copies of Condolence Puppet. Condolence Puppet is essentially a hard once per turn Foolish Burial that lets you send Gimmick Puppet monsters from your deck to the graveyard up to the number of monsters your opponent controls, summoned from the extra deck, +1. So your opponent has 3 extra deck monsters that don't really do anything, or they've already used their negates. Congratulations, this will now let you send 4 Gimmick Puppets from your deck to the graveyard. And then, because there are a crap ton of level 8s in this deck, I do play 3 copies of Trade-In. Trade-In lets you discard a level 8 monster for cost to then be able to draw 2 cards. And then next, I play 3 copies of Mansion of the Dreadful Dolls. Mansion of the Dreadful Dolls has the effect that when it's activated, you can add a Gimmick Puppet monster from your deck to your hand. Gimmick Puppet monsters you control cannot be destroyed by battle and are unaffected by activated effects of your opponent's monsters, except for Xyz monster effects. So, the main thing preventing this deck from really doing much is going second against Ryzeal, as that kind of just destroys them. And then, I can't remember what the other effect was. Once per turn, you can detach a material from an Xyz monster you control. Target a Gimmick Puppet monster in your graveyard, special summon it to your opponent's field in defense position. And you can only use each effect of Mansion of the Dreadful Dolls once per turn. Or you can only activate. Okay, no, you can only activate each effect, or you only activate one mansion per turn. And then lastly, for the spells, I play 3 copies of King Sarcophagus. King Sarcophagus has the effect that up to 4 times per turn, you can discard 1 card to send a Horus monster from your deck to the graveyard. And then your Horus monsters are unaffected by opponent's card effects unless they specifically target it. And then at the start of the damage step, if your Horus monster battles, you can send that opposing monster to the graveyard. And you can only use that effect at King Sarcophagus once per turn. And then for the traps, I play 1 copy of Service Puppet Play. Service Puppet Play has the effect that you can target monsters your opponent controls up to the number of Gimmick Puppet Xyz monsters you control. Take control of them until the end phase. And then those cards in your graveyard, except the turn it's sent there. And you control a Gimmick Puppet Xyz monster, you can banish this card to then target an Xyz monster in either player's graveyard, special summon it to either field and defense position. You can only use each effective Service Puppet Play once per turn. Honestly, this is mainly just used to take opponents monsters from your opponent if you fail to Xyz, or if you fail to FTK them. So one thing I like doing is, as soon as my opponent summons Duo Drive, for example, you can then use Service Puppet Play to take control of their Duo Drive until the end of the turn. Which I actually did do once, and it actually just stopped them completely, which I thought was hilarious. Well, I say it stopped them completely, but they had 4 Rise of the Monsters. They used 2 to summon Duo Drive. And then I used Puppet Play, taking control of all 3 of their monsters. And that's when they had to just pass and be left with 3 monsters that didn't really do anything. And then lastly, I play 1 copy of Puppet Shark. Puppet Shark has the effect that you can detach material from a monster on either field, and if you do, execute the top 4 cards of your deck, choose one of them, and apply the following effect depending on what that card is. If it's a monster or a spell, you can add it to your hand, or if it's a trap, you can set it, or you set it and it can be activated this turn. You only activate 1 Puppet Shark per turn. And that's it for the main deck. Moving on to the extra deck. For the extra deck, I play 1 copy of Gimmick Puppet Chimera Doll. Gimmick Puppet Chimera Doll has the effect that during your main phase, if you control this Link Summon card, you can activate this effect. So you can also special summon the extra deck for the rest of the turn, except for Machine Xyz monsters. Also, you can take a Gimmick Puppet monster from your deck, either add it to your hand or send it to the graveyard. Once it adds to your hand, and you can summon it. I can't remember what it is. Okay. You either send it to the graveyard, add it to your hand, and then if all monsters you control for the minimum of 1 are Gimmick Puppet monsters, you can then special summon that monster. Which usually, I remember for the FTK, you use this to add Terror Baby from deck to your hand, but you do not summon it. Instead, you use the additional normal summon that you get through the combo to normal summon the Terror Baby. Then I play 1 copy of Gimmick Puppet Gigantus Doll. You never summon this. This is only in here for in case you need to add or summon a level 4 Gimmick Puppet. Such as if you already have the Rouge Doll in hand, you can reveal this to then summon this and your little soldiers from deck. And next, I play 3 copies of number 15 Gimmick Puppet Giant Grinder. Gimmick Puppet Giant Grinder has the effect that twice per turn, you can detach material to target 1 special summon monster your opponent controls, destroy it. And then if the destroyed monster was an Xyz monster, you can then deal damage to your opponent equal to that destroyed monster's attack. Or is it half of it? I don't remember. Okay. And then next, I play 2 copies of Gimmick Puppet Fantasix Machinics. Fantasix Machinics has the effect that once per turn you can detach material to then add a rank up magic spell from your deck to your hand. And then you also get an additional normal summon of the machine monster during your main phase. In addition to your normal summer set, you can only get that effect once per turn. And if you special summon a Gimmick Puppet exceeds monster, except during the damage step, then you can special summon this card from your graveyard to either field and offense position. And then you can add a Ring Cut Magic spell from your graveyard to your hand. So you use its effect, you'll add the Origin Chaos Force from deck to hand. And then you can summon this to your opponent's field to then return Origin Chaos Force from your graveyard to your hand. So you can then use it again. Which usually when you do that, it's because, if I remember correctly, you end up linking this off for the thing. I honestly don't remember how the FTK works. I just remember it isn't that hard to do. Because normally you'll give this to your opponent, and then Giant Grinder can destroy it and inflict 1,500 points of damage. And then next, I also play one copy of number 40, Gimmick Puppet of Strings. I would play more than one, but considering Strings and Dark Strings were both put to 1, because they can FTK. Gimmick Puppet of Strings has the effect that once per turn, you can detach material to play string counters on every other monster in play. And during your opponent's next end phase, all monsters with a string counter are destroyed, and your opponent takes 500 points of damage for each monster destroyed. And then lastly, just because I think it's actually hysterical, I play one copy of number 88, Gimmick Puppet of Leo. Gimmick Puppet of Leo has the effect that if you have no cards in your spell and trap zone, you can detach material to give it one string count or one destiny counter. And then once Gimmick Puppet of Leo has 3 has 3 destiny counters, you win the duel. However, this is mainly in here for its chaos form, so just this one basically doesn't have an effect. Next, I play 2 copies of Chaos number 15, Gimmick Puppet Giant Hunter. Giant Hunter has the effect that once per turn, you can detach material, target one card on your opponent's field, destroy it, and then if it was a monster, your opponent takes damage equal to its original attack. Next, I play 2 copies of Chaos XZ's Gimmick Puppet Fanatix Machinix. Anyway, Fanatix has the effect that when it's summoned, you can add a puppet trap from your deck to your hand. That's why each of those 2 traps are one-ofs, because summoning this just gives it to you. And then once per turn, you can detach material, summon a Gimmick Puppet monster from your graveyard to either player's field in defense position. And then when a monster is summoned to your opponent's field, you can activate this card's effect to then destroy said monster and then deal half its original attack to your opponent as damage. Then I play 1 copy at Chaos number 40, Gimmick Puppet of Dark Strings. Dark Strings has the effect that when it's special summoned, you destroy all monsters with a string counter, and your opponent takes damage equal to the monster with the highest original attack of those destroyed monsters, and then you get to draw 1 card. You shush. And then lastly is 1 copy of Chaos number 88, Gimmick Puppet Disaster Leo. Disaster Leo cannot be special summoned except by a rank up magic spell targeting a number 88 Gimmick Puppet Leo you control, which is understandable because it also has an alternate win condition. Once per turn, you can detach material to inflict 1,000 points of damage to your opponent. And then your opponent has, during the end phase, if it has no material and your opponent's life points are 2,000 or less, you automatically win. That is it for my Gimmick Puppet deck profile. If you have any ideas what I can do to improve the deck, any ideas for decks like to see be made in the future, or decks like to see face each other, feel free to comment down below. I always read the comments, and I am working on a couple games such as Red Dragon vs. Stardust and Tachyon Dragon vs. Photon Dragon, just to give a couple ideas. Anyway, if you're still here, thanks for watching.